You are going to die soon. Most people, whenever you say you're going to die, well, everybody kind of like accepts that. But when you add the word soon, you're going to die soon. I promise you. Everybody does. See, now you may be thinking, well, you don't know. I mean, I might live to be 90. That isn't very long. 80? Not long at all. And then again, that's saying you make it to that age. Car accidents, sickness, all sorts of things. So take my word for it. You're going to die soon. Like I said, people don't like it when you add that word soon. And the Stoics used to have this phrase, Momento Mori. Remember, you're going to die. And the Romans, whenever there was a victorious, this is pretty common to be talked about, whenever a Roman general had a victory parade for some great conquest, they go through the city with this great big parade, and on the back of the chariot, the general would ride, and behind him a slave would hold a laurel crown above his head, constantly saying to him, remember that you are mortal. Remember that you are mortal. A constant reminder that despite his victory, he's mortal. We're all mortal. And our lives are short. You know, it's like leaves. Leaves is a very common metaphor for the shortness of human life. Homer did it. There was two soldiers who had met on the fields outside Troy, and they talked about the lives of men being like leaves. Dante talks about how people trying to get into the boat that will take them to hell are tumbling over one another. And it reminded me of the days when I was a kid in New York, and we'd rake up all these leaves, and you'd get the big pile going, and you'd rake them, and they just tumble over one another, just over and over and over. And then there's Shakespeare. Shakespeare in the 73rd sonnet says, and I'm going to read it for you because I don't remember this one quite as well. That time of year thou mayest behold, when yellow leaves or none or few do hang upon those boughs which, shaken against the cold, bear ruined choirs, where once the sweet bird sang. Again, the symbol of leaves, falling leaves, the symbol of the shortness of life, and man's life being so short because they're like leaves. They come and they go. One of the most moving passages concerning leaves that I once read was in, of all books, Bambi. I've talked in other places about what a phenomenal book that is, and people mistake the book for the movie. The movie was a cute little kid cartoon, but the book is anything but. But there's a chapter where two leaves are talking, and they're talking about the shortness of life and how once they had the sun, and the sun would warm them, and they're getting older and drier and starting to fall. Their leaves the colors are changing. They don't see themselves as beautiful as they once were. And as I walked along the Camino, I noticed those leaves. I noticed the leaves along the way, especially when it rains. A lot of the leaves on the muddy trails, they get ground underfoot, and you see them all muddy and wrinkled and torn. You see them underneath the trees falling and things like that. So man's lives are like leaves. And the other thing about it is that on the Camino, people come and go. I just passed through a town, Santa de Lira. Forgive me for the pronunciation. But this was one of those points at which people typically drop off. And there's a lot of points along the Camino where people typically drop off. They don't go all the way. And last year, some folks dropped off. Some folks took other routes where we didn't see them again. And some people made it all the way, but one of the most saddest parts about the Camino was saying goodbye to all those people. So that's what life is like. Like I said, the Camino is life in microcosm. People come and go, and they get on the trail, they go off the trail. They don't always make it to the end. And that's what life is like. I kind of think of life as a bag of potato chips. And let me explain it this way. I love potato chips. I mean, anybody who knows me knows I love potato chips. I just finished a big bag just a second ago. And you know what's great is when well, I'm not going to talk about how great potato chips are. I love that salty greasiness that's just so terrible for you. But the thing is, with potato chips, if you ever been or really hungry for something, for me it's potato chips. And imagine yourself, you really love potato chips. You really want a good bag of potato chips, some good chips. And you run into the local convenience store and you grab a bag of chips, but it's not that big. And you open it up and you know it's not that big. And you kind of like take one and you savor it, and then you take the next and you savor it. Until finally all you have left is crumbs, and then you get the bag and you shake it down your throat like that. See, that's what life is. Life is like that bag of potato chips where every chip you should savor. You just don't plow through a little bag of potato chips when you're really enjoying the bag of potato chips. And that's kind of like what life is like. Ricky Gervais, in his show, The Afterlife, talked about the fact that this is the only life we have, and that he doesn't believe in an afterlife makes the time he has here all the more precious. And I agree with that. I agree that the time we have here is all the more precious, and we really don't know what's on the other side, and that will be a talk for another day, because I'm told some of these talks are way too long. But our time is so precious that we have to ask ourselves, what do we do with it? I worked for a guy once, when he was interviewing people, he'd ask them, what time do you wake up on Saturday morning? And if they said like late, like they'd sleep in, he wasn't all that interested in hiring them. And his idea was that they had no sense of urgency about their life. They didn't feel that their time here was precious. And I agree with that. And most of my life I woke up before dawn. Now I'm retired, not so much, but then again I stay awake later. So with time being so precious, what are we doing with it? Now the other day I talked about accomplishments and how we need to use that time, that we're lucky to be alive, and that we should be taking special care to use our time as best we could. But there's another aspect of it, and that's with the ones we love. I have a friend who worked for a woman, or I'm not even sure if she still does, and the husband was very old, and he was very sick. Excuse my hand. I don't have a tripod today, so I'm kind of like doing it, holding my hand. My arm's getting a little tired. And she would say how, despite the gentleman's health issues, which were significant, the wife just still savored those days of holding him while they slept, of just being there with him, holding his hand. I mean, that was really important. And that's what you really should be thinking about when we talk about making the most of our time. Of course, you should do something with your life, as I talked about before, and we should try to use our time here as best we could, as in our talents as best we could. But when you talk about as best we could, we should also remember that as best we could also includes the ones we love, and sharing our time with the ones we love, and showing the ones we love how precious they are to us. Remember, we're all going to die soon. The person that you love, your spouse, your children, your parents, even your children, there's no guarantee. We all want, no parent wants to bury their child, but there's no guarantee that won't happen. There's no guarantee that any of us will outlive our children, or our children will outlive us, or whatever. So we need to cherish those times together, and we need to prioritize those people, and we need to make sure that they know that we love them, and we need to make them a priority. What's a greater priority? Facebook? You're going to argue on Facebook and say, oh, no, I'll talk to you in a little bit. I'm looking at this thing on Facebook. I don't have time to talk to you now. Or, oh, I'm watching this show. America's Got Talent is on. Oh, I got to watch this because we got to find out who wins. But no, I can't talk to you now. Really? Those things are that more important? Much more important than the person you love? Of course there's a balance. Of course, sometimes, something comes on the news and you're very interested in, the person walks in the room and it's like, well, just give me a second. Or you're in the middle of something, just give me a second. And that's fine. But when it's, I don't want to talk to you. I got something else going on. Leave me alone for a minute. Leave me alone. I'm interested in this other thing. Reject them enough. And they'll know what you think of them. Maybe you don't really think that of them, but they'll feel that. And that time that you spent Facebook, Google, Instagram, these stupid videos that I make, YouTube, are they really that important? More important than the person you love? I don't think so. Anyways, isn't that a happy thought? It actually is. Because if you think about it, you can have a very joyous life if you embrace the people you love and treat them with the priority they deserve. And that's all for now. Buen Camino.